Detectives with the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office are turning to genetic genealogy for new leads in cold case investigations. They're hoping that the very same information that you submit to ancestry databases to learn more about your family tree can help them identify those involved in some of the country's oldest unsolved cases. Caitlin Stansel took a closer look at the costs and uncovered the privacy battle looming over your DNA.
Some of Beaufort County's oldest violent cases.
This is actually an autopsy photo.
Are still just papers in a folder.
Well, cold cases are unresolved, usually murder investigations or sexual assaults. Those will remain open forever. Unless there's some resolution.
Detectives like Major Bob Bromage are putting new hope in old DNA.
The chances of solving that case diminish over time. So with this technology, with the new ancestry databases being accessible to law enforcement, we are going to take advantage of that.
Companies like Parabon are the mediators between law enforcement and ancestry databases like GEDmatch. Like pieces of a puzzle, the company uses genetic matches to construct a family tree and identify the missing piece investigators have been searching for.
So if someone shares a lot of DNA, that means they're related. And when we're talking about related, these are typically very distant relatives. So we're very excited if we see a second cousin, but most of the time we're seeing people at sort of the third cousin level. So these are very distant. These are people in GEDmatch who almost certainly do not know this suspect personally, but their DNA ties them together.
The science behind this approach made national headlines last year.
We found the needle in the haystack.
It helped identify the Golden State Killer, a man tied to dozens of rapes and murders in the 70s and 80s. And in Beaufort County,
hopefully somebody in her family has submitted DNA to one of these ancestry DNA databases.
Detectives are hoping this burgeoning technique can help identify a woman found strangled to death and raped. Her body dumped in a drainage ditch almost 25 years ago.
We owe that to them. We owe it to the victim. We owe it to the families to not give up on these cases. These are horrible cases. These are murders. These are sexual assaults, and you don't recover from those things. So to be able to offer them some measure of closure, I think it is our responsibility.
Parabon charges law enforcement $5,000 to submit DNA, analyze the results, and build out a family tree for any matches. But the work doesn't end there. Law enforcement agencies then have to match the DNA sample directly to the possible suspect identified through Parabon's work.
If you've got nowhere else to go in a case, it pays.
But some argue the price is charged to your privacy.
The question is whether I, as the consumer, as someone who has submitted a DNA sample to one of these companies, whether I have what's called a reasonable expectation of privacy in that information.
Ancestry databases like GEDmatch have already taken steps to address this concern by asking consumers to give explicit permission for law enforcement access, while other companies like 23andMe don't work with law enforcement unless they are compelled to do so. But these actions are not to protect your privacy, but rather the company's interest.
I don't think people realize how much we have given to private companies, not just in terms of the sheer amount of data that we've shared with private companies, but also the way that we have delegated to private companies whether or not we have privacy from government inquiry.
This debate over the privacy of your genetic information is a new frontier the courts have yet to address.
As to which argument would win, at this point I think it's anybody's guess.
And until there is a definite answer, Bromage says he's going to see if this resource can be used to close some of his county's oldest cases.
People like to use the word closure, but there is some measure of closure for a family to know that this case has been resolved and not forgotten.
From Beaufort County, Caitlin Stansel, Live 5 News.